Record it, please. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're very privileged to have Jim Drever here with us. He is a regional director of a center in Wyoming for SBDC, and he is also a certified ethical hacker. And he presented to our team a few weeks ago about some cybersecurity tips, and we wanted to have him speak to business owners and others so you can also learn the information. He'll be including some tips about password protection, backups, phishing, and ransomware. So Jim, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're excited to hear your information.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. As we were talking just before we started, and I don't know if this is cybersecurity related, but they found that the federal banking services have an outage right now, which working in cybersecurity, I always say when people can't do wire transfers and all sorts of things, it makes you raise an eyebrow. They're saying it's operational issues, but it just kind of leads into where we're going today. Where we're going today, I want to go through a little bit of introduction and the purpose of why you're here and not somewhere else. Then I want to look at the basics that really cover you. And, that's looking at passwords, backups, patches, updates, phishing. And then because it's really grown, I thought it would go away, but it's getting pervasive and more interesting. So we'll spend a minute talking about ransomware too as well. So getting into the introduction of where things are at, let's talk about the market and industry. I have a graphic that shows all the different vendors that show up, and there's thousands of them. And not only are there thousands of them, people are putting a lot of money into cybersecurity companies. So the marketing messages are everywhere. Everyone's got a bunch of webinars, and it's really difficult to figure out who's just trying to sell you something and who's trying to offer you genuine, useful information. What I do with the Wyoming Small Business Development Center, yes, I'm in charge of a region in South Central Wyoming where I assist with general business services. But statewide, I help businesses and organizations with cybersecurity. That can go from trying to figure out how do I not get hacked to I think I've been hacked, or a lot of people are developing web applications and other things, and they say, is this secure? Can you test this for me? And I can do some of that testing, which is fun. And how this webinar is a little bit different. We're not trying to sell you anything. You're already here, and to me, that's terrific. And the second thing about how this webinar is different is I want to bring it from a little bit more hands-on perspective. If you were here before we officially got started, I mentioned that a lot of people tell you do this, do that, and you sort of say, okay, I should do that. What I want to do is lend a little bit of the why to that and show you from a hacker's perspective on some of these tools that we use and how, a few little simple things will help you out. So the purpose today is we're worried about in cybersecurity with two types of threats. There's what I call the general threat, the generic threat. These are bored people with servers. They set up automated scripts using tools. They go computer to computer, prod, poke. They take passwords, test, password dumps, test them, see if they can get in. If they get in somewhere, then they'll go to the next level. The very specific threat is uncommon, and that's usually when somebody's out to get you. They want to get your business, they want to get you personally, they want to get your money. And that's not really so much the focus of today, because 99% of what you're dealing with is just what happens to be out there. So we're going to talk about the 4 basics for safety today: passwords, backups, patches, updates. I keep those included because people use the terms interchangeably. Phishing and tricking you. If you can kind of guard yourself on those things, you're no longer the low-lying fruit, and life's better. So what we're going to do is jump right into passwords. There's the 3 cardinal rules, and we'll get into those in a minute. You don't reuse your password. Don't use words, names, places, things like that. And you need to make them long. And it's one thing for me to tell you that, and it's another thing for me to show you why. I'm going to try a little bit of screen sharing. You might notice that there's 2 of me online today. Let me go full screen on this side. And I want to try and do this without revealing anything too sensitive. Let's see, Shift F. And Zoom. Share screen. And here we go. Let's see, and I have to look and see if that's showing up okay. So I'm going to jump right into the dark web. This is a dark web website. You're used to one I'll show you here, which isn't on the dark web that you can use. That's Have I Been Owned? This is the dark web version where you can plug in any sort of domain. So we could do Gmail and we can do a search for it. And what this is there's, I forget if it's how many, 1.4 billion breached compilation on this one. And it'll start going alphabetically when it's up and running. And you can go through and look at all the different plain text usernames and email addresses. So how I use this in work, in real life, as a certified ethical hacker is when somebody says, can you break into my system? I'll say, sure. The first thing I do is I don't go try and break your system with fancy hardware, whatever else. I go online and I see if I can find your username and password and go from there. And then similarly, there's other things out there. Let me do a new share. And it's always interesting. Please, yeah, it takes me a second as I'm using two computers for this, which should make things a little bit more interesting. So I mentioned that there's the regular Have I Been Owned? It's spelled with a P, that's from online gaming. But basically you can type in your email address and then you can click Owned and see if you show up in any breach. It won't tell you exactly where. It'll say you've shown up. In this case, my work email has been shown in 3 different data breaches. I don't know where they are, but what that tells me is that somewhere, somebody, I know LinkedIn was one of them, lost my username and password. And somebody out there has it and is probably trying it on chase.com, whatever bank you might use. They're trying it all over the place. They just automate it, and if they can get in, they're going to have fun with it. The other one that I mentioned was there's other places where you can find passwords. This is on the plain web. There's a site called Pastebin where people just take stuff and paste it. It's plain text. You used to be able to search on the site, but they got a lot of criticism because people were using it to get passwords. And so they took away the search. So instead we use Google. And so we can do a quick Google search on it and we can get password logs. There's just dumps in there and we can click on one. I don't know what any of these are. They're just, and they're various logins, passwords. And so here we get, different emails, passwords. And that's all in the plain web. It's out there. And the reason I'm showing you this is that it is out there. This is why you don't want to reuse the passwords. You're using the same password for everything. Somebody will find it somewhere, and then they're going to go to LinkedIn. They're going to go to Facebook. They're going to go to your bank. They're going to try it out and see if they can get in. And a lot of this is automated. So it's not something, you shouldn't worry your whole life about it, but it's something to really pay attention to. All right, I'm going to jump back to my slideshow for just a second before I jump into the next part. So that's first rule, don't reuse. The next rule, if you remember, was don't use place names, things like that. So if you think you're doing something clever and you do a couple of names and a place name, it doesn't really work very well. First off, the tools that you use when you're cracking password, they can do those substitutions where you change an I to an exclamation mark, the A to the @ sign, and that sort of thing. But what I've got set up on that I could show you here is, before I jump, I'm going to show you also the bottom code that you see on my presentation there. That's a hash symbol. That is when you take a password and you encrypt it into a hash. So some people say, well, the password's been hashed, it's no problem. And I want to show you quickly why that's not necessarily so. So let me get back to that browser screen. And here, I'm going to close this so I don't jump back in here. By the way, if anyone has any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to ask at any time. I'd like it to be a conversation instead of me pontificating. So this is crack station. It's a 15 gigabyte database of just names, words, and places. You'll see on there, they have the entire Wikipedia in all its different languages, every word that they have. So if you think you're going to be smart and do something in German and French, they've meshed it all together. And they use that to sit there and try and run through passwords to break into things. If you have a list that you're going with, it makes it a lot easier. I mentioned that hash passwords are really easy to break. I have some really cool hacker tools that are fun. It looks like on TV where they kind of show the numbers and it's trying the different combinations. I like to demonstrate why you don't want to use one of these typical passwords in Google. So I'm just using Google search. I've taken that hash and I put it in there. I can do this without deleting my text and keeping the hash complete. Life will be good. Hit return. And you can already see what password that was encrypted. Password 1. Again, that's a good reason to not jump in and just use place names and sports teams and things like that that show up. All right, jumping back in. And then the next point, I should wait until I get my happy share going. The next thing that you learn about is that the third rule, the big rule, is that longer is better. And my PowerPoint is here. All right, we're showing it good. Let me advance the slide. And so the last resort, if you can't use one of these tables, you can't find a quick hash, you can't find the username password combination that's working, but you really kind of want to just do something, but you really don't want to work at it, you brute force. Brute force is just using your computer processor to try different combinations. I would do that, but in the interest of time, I'm going to show you a screenshot of what's called Johnny the Ripper. This is a screenshot off my computer, and I just wanted to show you the tool here. I'm in options, and there's the default single crack word list. We showed you the word list. And here's incremental. And you don't need to read the fine print on that, but basically, if it's going to go through every combination, every single thing, and it's going to take a long time, especially if that password is long. So what you're doing by having a longer password is making it, only somebody who's got dedicated computer power and time and real interest, that 1% is going to go after you. So I've done enough scaring on that sort of side. That's part of this presentation too, is how do you protect yourself? You've heard it over and over again, use two-factor authentication. And I agree completely. And it's annoying because a lot of services like Google have it, but it's not automatic. So you need to turn it on. You will get asked, do you want to use SMS or text messaging, or do you want to use an app like Authy or Microsoft Authenticates? Use the app, because there's an attack where somebody can do what's called a SIM swap, and they have your phone and they can go in and say, yes, I'm trying to get in my bank account, send me a text, and it'll send a text and they've got the two-factor. If you use the Authy or Authenticate, they have to log in with another password, and that just kind of protects you. The other one I use on my Apple computers, it has a little fingerprint thing, biometric. I like that. YubiKey is a little keychain device. I'll pick one up and show you, but you plug it into your phone, or otherwise it's something that you have, a second factor. Password is something you know, biometric is something you are, and YubiKey is something you have. I have personally not gone to the YubiKey because I know I will leave that YubiKey at home one day and I will show up to work and I'll try and log in and it's not going to happen. So I recognize that two-factor authentication and biometric is the way to go. I haven't lost any fingers yet. The next thing to do is use a password manager. I'm gonna jump in and say, I get asked all the time, which one should I use? And it varies. You can use that link that I have in the presentation there, or you can just Google up best password protector. And I like the PC Mag version there because it lists about 12 or 15 of them, but it says best for multiple users, best for this, best for that. And everybody's situation is a little different. And you can look at those best factor things and sort of say, yeah, let's give that one a try. Then go for it, but you probably taking it. I can already feel the room in, and all your usernames into this would take a long time. It's a little scary. There's a lot of resistance. Instead, start with something you don't use very often that's not critical to your business function. So hold off on your email maybe, and maybe start with Pandora. Maybe start with some other little service, or maybe social media that you're not really that in tune to. Try it out, and as you'll slowly discover that you love it, because you don't have to remember, you don't have to type those things. Speaking of typing those things, I have a favorite method that I like to use, and I've got it displayed in one form on this slide. Everyone's used to www dot and then something dot something and / whatever else. We've got this. It's a language. We understand it, but we can take advantage of this. And the example there, you can see, I said, instead of www, let's turn it upside down, mmm. And then there's a bunch of gibberish. You can probably guess on 2020. And then you can look below and you can see my sort of thing that I had to remember it. 2020 was a terrible year unless you were a COVID virus. Isn't that true? So question mark on each side of the true. And that's how I came up with this password. For example, I'm going to look and see if I have questions. You have questions? Yeah. Any questions? Just throw them. I just want to take a little pause there before we transition into the next one. I promised Stacy I would have.
Jim, there was one question.
Oh.
What is a hash password?
Hash password is a password that's taken from plain text, and through a mathematical algorithm, there's several different ones. It's put into what, if you remember on that slide back here. So that thing at the bottom of the slide there is password 1, and it's been hashed. It's put into a hash value. And so theoretically, these are encrypted and difficult to decrypt. But if it's a common password, not so much. All right. Thank you for that. I promised a meme. So in the year of COVID, let's talk about being prepared and having backups. So, there's a big question on the, why do you have backups? And it's not so much necessarily a hacking computer cybersecurity thing. It's a risk management perspective. Your hard drive will only spin a certain number of thousands of times before it fails. It's part of the hard drive. It says it will spin this many thousand times and the bearing's going to give out. Your computer, I know so many people who've had a computer fail on them. It's common. When your office in the middle of a Texan desert floods because of broken pipes, that could take your computer with. If your computer's stolen, that could happen too. You're kind of out of business. The cyber, what I added there, of course, is when your employee downloads ransomware and affects every computer on the network, including yours. If you have a good backup, you can find another computer, or maybe you can fix what's wrong with yours, whatever it might be. And you could be up and running again within 2 hours, maybe depending on how much data you have or how you backed it up. It might be 6 hours, but you're up and running. You haven't lost out of business. You haven't lost your personal photos. It's just an easy thing to do. And by easy, let's discuss a couple of options how to do it. My favorite method is I like to use just a simple USB drive, plug it in and back it up that way. Some people like using a paid online service. Now, whichever one you use, if you're going to use the online service, it comes with basically the application. Hard drives often come with them. Apple computers come with Time Machine, which is really good, and Windows 10 Pro also has a version. But the reason I'd like to use a service like that, an application, rather than just taking the files and copying it across, is it does chronological, point in time. This is important with ransomware, and I'm already talking about ransomware. It's to the end of the presentation. But with ransomware, there's an incubation time that's set by whoever sets it up for you, which is varies usually from a couple of days. It can be as long as a week. I mean, it could be longer, but they usually want to see a response on it and get their money. If you have just dragged your files across and then you restore your computer and you just drag them back again, there's a good chance that the next day the ransomware will kick in, and you'll just have to go through that, and that's tedious. But if you can use chronological backups, you can say, Mary sent me that accounting file, and there was something weird. It never opened right. That was on Tuesday. Oh, maybe it was in that. So let's restore back to Monday, and that predates when you got the ransomware, and you're good to go. A big thing I put in there too is store your backups elsewhere. I like to keep a copy of my home computer backup here in my office. I like to keep a copy of my office computer backup at home. That way, if my office blows up, I've got a backup of it ready to go at home. If my home blows up, I've got a backup copy ready to go here. I live 30 miles from my house, so if both are lost, I'm probably lost too. Some people put a copy in their safety deposit box. The other thing on there too, by using a service, jumping back to that, is it's encrypted. And that's an option on the Apple side. You sometimes have to select it. I noticed on a newer machine recently, it's automatic. But that means that if somebody comes into my office and grabs my backup disk, they don't just run over, plug it in, and they're up and running. And the services by default do that. They're pretty good. Final note on backups, you need to test them. It's one thing to have them, but it's another thing to test them. If you can grab another computer, restore onto it, see if it works, grab an old computer, test it. A great example of this with ransomware that was successful, you might remember about 3 or 4 years ago, the Bay Area Rapid Transit system in San Francisco. The BART system was hacked. They had ransomware, and what they did is they just said, we've got good backups. We're going to let everyone ride free this weekend and restore the backups over the weekend, and Monday we'll be up and running. That's what they did, and it was a great success story. Any questions on backups before I jump into patching? Nope. Okay. I don't see any. I've got my other screen ready. So getting into updates and patching, they're tedious. It seems like every day Adobe has a new patch for you that you have to worry about. The problem is really developers make a lot of mistakes with their code. Oh, I saw one. Yep. Developers, they're human beings, and that's one of the quality things that Bill Gates and others have alluded to. If we really want better cybersecurity, we have better software with better code in it. And until that happens, there's going to be mistakes, and we're going to find them. It's frustrating, but I want to show you what it looks like on the other side of things. And let me share a screen again. I'll share my Brave browser. I'm not totally sold on Brave, but it lets me do Tor, which is handy. Let's see. This is the one I had open. So there's a database here carried by, some people call it MITRE, some people call it Mitre. It depends if you're French or if you're English, your preference, but they have a database of common vulnerabilities. As a cybersecurity researcher, if you find something, you submit it to these people. And if you get it published on there, it's like bonus points. And so what you can look on here, and what I picked on Adobe Flash, I've got that there. And what this does is it lists all the vulnerabilities that are public. So this doesn't include O days or 0 days as they're called. This is stuff that's out there and that they're actively patching on if they haven't. The listing on here, CVE, common vulnerability. And then it's followed by a year that it's discovered, and then another random, and then it's got a description. And so we've done Adobe Flash. We know that it was discontinued, but you can look at all the vulnerabilities that have shown up. And if you get back into 2017, 2016, you can see all these vulnerabilities. This is why you had those patches coming up all the time. And so when somebody argues and says, I really need to play Farmville or whatever is based on Flash, say, that's just a leaky system. I mean, most of the time they say things like arbitrary code execution. So if somebody makes a bad website, Farmville can basically get into your computer if somebody's done anything to it. Another one that you saw in there with the search that shows up quite a bit. You don't just patch your applications, but you also think about things like WordPress. And WordPress needs to be kept up to date as well as its plugins. Because WordPress is so ubiquitous as a website development platform, hackers are playing with it all the time. So 2021, it doesn't show a lot, but you can just see last year, the vulnerabilities. XSS is cross-site scripting. That's usually need advanced attack to take advantage of that. But you can just see 2020. We haven't gotten to 2019 yet. As I scroll, it gives you an idea of all the vulnerabilities. And this is really gets into, on the patching side of things, what you need to do. So it's one thing to say, okay, great, you've got all these patches out there. I'm safe, nobody's going to find me or what have you. Let me introduce you to another tool on the web, and it's called Shodan, shodan.io. It's considered the Google for hackers. And so let me see if I'm still logged in. Shodan is, that one. I think we're good to go. Shodan is basically, instead of like Google indexing, reading the words, text, trying to figure out what's relevant to you, Shodan goes by IP address. So it steps through every IP address and it basically says, hi, you at 193.26. Whatever, what are you? And it sends a little, what's called a banner grab. And then it starts scanning ports and it just tries to figure out what's on there. And it does look and test for passwords a little bit. I don't know how in depth that goes, but this is a tool that you can use for good things and you can use for bad things. A lot of people are bored, use it for bad things. But so I saved a search on here. This became famous, and this goes back to changing default passwords. Let's see if it, port 554 is true. This is famous because they found all the webcams, tons of webcams all over the world that aren't protected. And let's see, do a search on that. This is just showing the screenshot from the front of a webcam. We're not going to get into anybody's webcam today. That's I'm an ethical hacker. We don't do that. So what we're doing is it's showing you on the left, there's 105,000 in the world. You can go by country and see how many are in which country. There's a lot in Vietnam, which is interesting. And then you can scroll through and see what's showing up on people's web cameras. Again, there's a lot out there that you can do a search for default password admin or admin1234. But this goes back into patching your devices as well as patching your computers. Do another thing, and then I'll show you where it comes in handy. If you're gonna, this can be scripted, so somebody can use this interface and develop software just to look for certain things out there, like those vulnerabilities, and they do show up in here. Also, it's dark, which isn't really fun. One more page, and then I'll show you the how would how would a hacker use this? It's all over the world, random. I'm glad nothing nasty showed up. We're all good. Sometimes you get like nursing homes and just icky stuff, and you just want to say, hey, lock things down. That's no good. But so how would a hacker maybe use this? Another one, anyone familiar with when I put in NT 6.1? Any geeks out there know what operating system that is? I check my chat over on this computer. Don't see any yet. Good. So NT 6.1 is Windows Server software from 2008. It hasn't been supported in years. It officially ended mainstream support in 2015. And so this stuff's out of date, And here we found instances, how many instances we have? 326,000 of these servers sitting out there that if somebody is really bored, they can go into and look at those vulnerabilities and try and get into them. With the service, so here's one in Singapore, you can click on it and get further information. And sometimes in these, it'll actually tell you the vulnerabilities that you can exploit on it. So this is a big problem out there. An example of why you want to patch your system software, many of you are familiar with WannaCry. That used uh, a, a flaw in Windows, and if everybody had patched it, WannaCry wouldn't exist. But the problem is people aren't patching their Windows systems, and um, it's carrying on. All right, let's see. I'm going to jump back into my presentation, and before I do that, I want to share the screen for you. All right. Now we need to go from current slide. All right. One thought I have on patching, I put it in there, it's not perfect. Enable auto update and forget. This works pretty well unless you're about to give a presentation. It's not very nice when Windows 10 decides you haven't used your presentation laptop in a few weeks and it's built some up. That can be a hassle, but if you can set the timing to have patches applied overnight. Make sure you patch your other stuff too. Other stuff being, I know my stereo, I went in and it has a Wi-Fi connection, it's, for Pandora and things like that. Updated that. I unplugged my refrigerator from the internet, but it's one, and I did that in part because there weren't any updates coming for it. So I figured it's a nuisance, but thermostats. And did I mention webcams in here anywhere? You want to make sure that you keep those up to date. There's a lot of times people, you install it and you forget about it and it's wonderful. That goes along with, getting rid of default passwords. What does patching a system mean? Patching is the same as updating. Honestly, my personal preference is it's updating because most of the time we call it updates. But the idea from computer history is you would have a broken piece of code and you would patch it with the correct code. I don't really like it, but I did find a nice free graphic that shows somebody patching. So, and I use it in this presentation because you will hear so many times, you need to patch, you need to have a patch policy, which is, it's okay. It's jargon that we have out there, and we should use it. But yeah, with getting back to updating, it's really important to update your other stuff around your house. And that what I like to do, and I'm on a slight tangent on that, is I keep an Excel list. And maybe it's just me and a heightened paranoia, but I keep a list of all the computers I have, where they are, iPads, things like that. What operating system, when did I update that last? And it's kind of like checking the batteries in my smoke detector on most things. I know not too many people are out to hack my stereo system, but maybe I should check that, every 6 months, a year, maybe with daylight savings time. It's a good policy to have. Let's see, I'm going to check again for questions. It looks like I'm doing okay. Backup apps, good source to find one. There's tons out there. I can't really recommend one over another. My recommendation is to look at their interface and see if it makes sense. This goes with so much online. Like, there's a lot of free website builders out there, like Weebly, Wix, Squarespace. They'll kind of do about the same thing, but for some of them, it's like taking a right-hand glove and trying to put it on your left hand. It's awkward. You're not going to use it. You're just going to hate it. You want to find one that works how you work, and that's going to make life simple. Because if you make it really difficult, you're not going to use it, and you're just back where you started. As I mentioned, when you do buy, I know this one came with software on it for doing backups. If you use the online services, like a big one out there is Kryptonite, they have services that do it as well. Again, Apple computers, I really like the Time Machine. It's saved my butt a lot. In fact, a few weeks ago, I almost lost all my photos, and it saved me. And also, Windows 10 regular doesn't have it built in, but Windows 10 Pro does. And it's always nice if it's just kind of built into the system. But if it isn't, find a service. The service will say, what do you want to back up? Choose what's important to you. And yeah, if you've got a big enough drive, they're cheap. You can get a 8 terabyte drive, I think, for around $100. And if you have a laptop, there's no way you're going to have 8 terabytes on there, and it will take care of it. Let me just take a question. I don't see other questions at this time, so that's good. All right, I'm going to move into the next topic, which is overdone as well, I think, but I think we need to visit it and just kind of understand it. And that's phishing. For the record, yeah, I didn't use the stock graphic. Those were my kids fishing last summer in Wyoming, and that is a fish that one of them caught. If you think about normal fishing, you're just kind of throwing bait out there, see if you catch anything. And that's what most fishing is. And that's changing a bit. Um, the purpose of most phishing is just to steal information and money. Um, I think there's a lot of bored kids in the world in the back closet saying, "Hey, let's see what we can do." And how do you fish somebody? What's the goal of it? And I mentioned, credential phishing, and credentials is just username and password. It could be username to, maybe you've gotten an email from Amazon that you've placed an order for $701 and you need to verify it or something like that. And you go to the website and yeah, you should be kind of worried at that point. Other ones are installing malware in your computer. And that malware is usually a Trojan software. These are everywhere. The one I run into the most in the last couple of years is called NJ Rat, like New Jersey Rat, RAT. You can download it off of GitHub. You can configure it and you can send it to people and have it do everything you want for you. And what it does is when somebody installs it on their computer, they can watch you browse. They can see the websites you're going to. Even though it shows up as asterisk, 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 they can see the keys you're typing into password forms. And then the other idea that some of them do, which is also really common, is at the end of the day, let's just install ransomware, see if we can get a few $100s off this person. That's the most common. There's varied levels of sophistication. The low end is where they send you just a link, and they did an experiment. I think it was they had a talk about it at DEF CON a number of years ago, where they just sent a link to see what would happen, nothing else. And 20% of the people opened up that link, and they said, "Well, how could we make this even more pathetic?" And they sent the link with, "Do not click this link." And the amount of people went up to something like 50%. And then, you see the usual misspellings. I throw in there, microspot.com. And then they go from that sort of level of sophistication where people, it seems like they're not really trying, that's where I feel like, elementary school project or something like that. And then you get to the ones that are perfect logos, text format, the language they use, it's really good. And what they sometimes do is really clever. And I'm going to show you how that goes just so you know what you're looking for when it comes to these things. Let's see, let me find it. There's my Brave browser, and we still have that open on that. And I think I've got this is, so what the idea is, a lot of things that you get, they're spoofed. And by spoofing, it's either you pretend you're Microsoft and you send something, you say, "This is from Microsoft.com." You get spoofed telephone calls, your auto insurance extended warranty is about to expire. You're used to that. And on your Outlook file or your Outlook program, and others have gotten really smart to it. They said, "Okay, we recognize that this isn't actually Microsoft.com. It doesn't match this. We have Outlook. It's not using Outlook server." All these red flags, and your spam filter is going to catch that most of the time, not all the time. So what hackers do now, if they're going to do a higher end, again, we're talking about phishing. We're not talking about spear phishing, which is where you're really after an individual. You look at their social media and you say, "Oh, they're into bike racing. Let's send them a fake thing about bike racing and get them to sign up for something and do that." This is still regular phishing. It's just a little bit more sophisticated. And what you do is you go out and choose what kind of a phishing email you're going to send. You spoof that domain, but you don't spoof that domain by just saying, "I'm Microsoft.com." Instead, you use other character sets. We're used to, the Roman alphabet. We're so used to that. But what we don't realize is that there's a whole bunch of other things out there. And so I'm going to show we do Microsoft, and it helps if I spell it right. Otherwise, you'll say this doesn't make any sense. And we'll do .com. Do I get to choose fire hydrants? Traffic lights. Yes, traffic lights. Did I get them all? Let's see if I messed up. Yay, I'm not a robot. All the robots have invaded Mars. We're safe here on Earth. All right. So what this site does is it looks out this is a security site. So you can put in your own domain name and see if somebody else might be running a campaign on this. There's a hacking version of this that does the same thing, but instead of looking for domains that are in use, it looks for open and available ones. And so what you want to look through on this is it shows you using alternative texts. So, I don't think anyone on this call is going to fall for that. A weird dot on the O. Yeah, this one, the R looks a little funny, but I might fall for that. That C looks too funny. Same with that O, the O. 0 zeros, that's old. That almost looks like an exclamation mark. Not even, oh, this one's better. Yeah, that would be a good one. Oh, this one's good. That one, I don't know about you. That I'd fall for that if somebody said that's linked to Microsoft. Those are the two O's in that. I don't know if you can see it with your resolution, but those are a different alphabet. I don't know which, and it's not my care. But the thing is what a hacker can do is say, okay, I'm going to register this domain, and then I'm going to set up my Outlook server with this domain. I'm doing my hand signals out of screen. You set up, I'm going to use this domain and set it up on my server, do everything legitimately. Of course, my server is a ghost server in the middle of nowhere, but it's a legitimate Microsoft Outlook server. And then I'm going to use this to spam people. And so because it's, Microsoft talks to another Microsoft server, it says, oh yeah, this is legit. It gets through the spam filter. It looks like Microsoft. And then you on the other end are sort of saying, I guess I don't know if you have a reason to log into Microsoft. I just use it as an example. But if you had a reason to log into Microsoft, that's a good way to fool you. And so that's a clear example on that. And I'm going to jump in and talk about how you try and keep that from happening to you. Switch back into my PowerPoint. One thing I didn't want to do to you is just sit there and go through a PowerPoint. It's just not fun. So I hope you're enjoying this. Oh, with phishing, I just wanted to share this one with you. This looks pretty unsophisticated. Maybe you remember something about a DNC hack. This is the email that they used to hack into the DNC. Not really much logo use, not much sophistication there. This was, the shortened link bit.ly rather than even going to Google. Anyway, I shouldn't laugh, but that just gives you an example of level of sophistication that people, if you're not paying attention, what have you, this can get you, and this is a perfect live example. So what should you do? Most scenarios with generic phishing, they don't want you to think. They want to work on your impulses. They want to get past the logical part of your brain that thinks things through and get inside where you're more of an animal, where you say, oh, I got to do this immediately. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, this makes me so angry. What you should have is a red flag that if you read an email from somebody that, and you feel angry, worried, upset, scared, just those basic emotions. If you feel that, that's a flag that something might not be right. Now, here's one that's really controversial that I like to use, and I use this example, and I don't do this in my head, mind you. This is kind of how I got started with it, is reading your email like I say, Igor. And what I mean by that is when you receive a text from your boss, your colleague, and you read it, your mind automatically reads it in their voice. And it takes that level of trust and knocks it down. And, your husband, your wife might say, oh, hey, I'm trying to get into our bank account. Do you remember the password? You read it in their words, your guard goes down. But instead, you read it like Igor. You say, honey, I think I forgot password to bank account. Can you please send me bank account password? Better English than that. But, if you're reading that in that Igor sort of frame of mind, you're going to say, whoa, wait a moment. Was that really her or him? At that point, yeah, I have it on there, verified by phone. It's like, was that really you asking for a password? Or this is checking to see if somebody got into their email or spoofed them. This can save you from high-end phishing, not just the low stuff. Anytime it involves bank accounts, money, sensitive sort of stuff, and it's, you're better off just to verify, did you really send me that email? And I want to put something very clear out there. You need to dial them. They do not dial you and call you up. Wells Fargo has had a problem with people calling up. This is Wells Fargo. We see your account's been compromised. Did you spend this $200 at this site? And the people say, no. Well, we can reset that for you. Oh, you can. Thank you. That'd be wonderful. We'll send you a code to your phone. Just give it back to us and you'll be good to go. Oh, it's the two-factor authentication thing. 63297, whatever. And they go back to their business, whatever else. Meanwhile, that person who spoofed Wells Fargo, phoned them, was trying to log into their account and bypass two-factor. If you'd say, I don't know if you're Wells Fargo or not, let me call you. And you look up their number online and you call them. They're running into this. There's been a few cases with this gets into the tricky side of things, where they've got computers that can generate your voice based on samples live time. So you plug it into your phone and I talk to you like I'm talking to you now, and it disguises my voice. I spoofed your number. By the way, if you ever want to spoof numbers, there's Play with Spoof Card. It's great for practical jokes and things like that. It's better if you dial. The other thing in there, going back to that Microsoft.com example I was showing, instead of clicking links, type them out yourself. It's so easy to just click on something, but that's just taking advantage of our lazy nature. And then the other thing is if you use your password manager. So at the example, you get an email from Amazon. Did you really order this $701 thing? You go, I don't know. And you're lazy, you're not thinking. You click Amazon, you go to Amazon, and you type in your username, and then you stop because your password manager has created this far out password that you have no idea what it is. At that point, you should say, oh, wait a moment. Amazon, it auto-populates. Maybe this is Amazon or something like that. That can save you. The other one that I like on there is antivirus. I put in home.sophos.com. It's I originally tried it out as a free one. It found all my certified ethical hacking tools that were in a compressed hidden folder, encrypted. And the fact that it found those told me that it's pretty good. So I switched to the paid version. But if you just need to do a free version for yourself or something like that, that's one that's good. Malwarebytes used to have a really good one. I can't find the free version anywhere, but there's a few free versions. Whether one software antivirus is better than another, I don't really think so. I think it's that left glove, right glove sort of thing. When I see, just checking for questions and answers, I see one popping up. Is it true that you're more prone to phishing emails right before 5 and right before lunch, since you might be in higher productive mode? I would agree with you on that, Laura. Yeah, that's it's when you're not thinking right, and I think that gets down to when you're hungry. You're not using that outer part of your brain. It's going after the. I'm not going to try and remember anatomy names on a webinar about cybersecurity, but it goes into that sort of older primitive animal sort of thinking at that point. Any other questions showing up? No. All right. So antivirus. Read your email like Igor. Yeah, you use your password manager, and you should just, don't trust everything and verify. If something's going to involve secrets, money, bank accounts, whatever else, stuff that's work sensitive, really call and verify and make sure that person, in fact, is that person. Or if they're in your office, just walk around the corner. It's like, you could have just asked me. And they say, what are you talking about? You've just thwarted an attack. It's pretty cool. The next sort of topic I want to talk about a little bit, in the last couple of years, I've kind of tried to stay away from it because it's just, it felt like it was a buzzword and it was one of those things that's going to go away, but it hasn't. Ransomware, you're probably familiar with. It tends to, it's basically an app that hops onto your computer, dials home to a central server somewhere else. It transmits a key back and forth, and at some time that's decided on how it's been implemented, again, this could be 5 hours, 5 days, whatever they set it up as, it suddenly starts encrypting your files. It goes after your photos. It has a list of type of files. It'll certainly go for any QuickBook files that it can find. And it tries to do that without you noticing. And the idea is then after it's encrypted your files, you get a pop-up notice that says, you have 3 days to give us, it's been inflation in the last couple of days, so let's whittle it down to half a Bitcoin. Nobody can afford 2 Bitcoin anymore. But you get that notification, and it says you need to do this and pay it. And if you do pay it, they'll give you a key, and they'll unlock it. They'll give you the key to unlock everything. Well, I thought that, AV antivirus was getting better at it and thought maybe it was on its way out. I was wrong. It's exploded. I have a list of some of the ones there: the Snatch, Ragnarok, Light, Darkside, Doppelpaymer. These are just some of them. And what I really want to point out about just this, some of them, is every single one of those is kind of a double ransomware. It's name and shame now. So this is just makes it more colorful. It'll lock up your files, but as it does that, it also exfiltrates them, which means it sneaks them out of your organization back to a server and basically collects all your stuff. And so you've got this, part that says you'll get that thing, if you want to unlock your files, you have to do this. And if you kind of ignore it, you then get another notification. Well, here's a dark website, and we're going to start posting this. You don't pay us within 3 or 4 days. Yeah, I had a couple of dark websites I was going to bring up and go to. One of them, I was encouraged that it was taken down, so maybe that ransomware is knocked out. And then the other one said it was only viewable if I enabled JavaScript. And I can't think of anything worse to do than go to a ransomware website on the dark web using JavaScript. So I'm not going to show you any of those today, but that's basically been their method to get past the antivirus and people being better at things. The problem is it's become a lot more professional. There's very organized groups behind it. One of the things I note in there is that it's ransomware as a service. So say if COVID's hit you hard, you lost your job, whatever else, you can go and contract out basically. I won't get into the nuances of it because I don't think that's a start your own business program we should have today. But basically, you can sort of contract with one of these organizations, and they'll give you the code, the links, whatever else, depending on how they implement it. And then you go out and you send it to people you don't like, or whoever it is. Maybe blanket list and try and get a bunch of people to do it. And then at the end of the day, those people get ransomwared, and you get 60% of the cut, and that company that developed the software gets 40% of the cut for people who pay the ransomware. That's a business model that's horrible, but it's out there and we should know about it. Other things that have changed in the last couple of years is their customer service it's terrific. You are no longer the victim. You are their most important person. You are their customer. It's not like calling Spectrum or whatever cable company you deal with where your call is important to us and they put you on hold. They actually answer. Other things that go in with that, I was in a seminar about this a little while ago, and what you hear is you never ever pay your ransomware. It's illegal, this, that, and they won't give you your keys. The researcher said what they found is, their cited amount, they say is 30% actually get the keys. He said it's more like 80%. Depending on your organization, you may break American laws by paying that ransom. But on the other hand, it's a difficult situation because what are you going to do? Speaking of what are you going to do? The antivirus is great. And if you haven't noticed, even though I'm using a weird browser, yes, I run Apples, and yes, I use antivirus. Not so much, it's an arms race on dealing with ransomware, because ransomware, at first it was just encrypt everything, and then the antivirus said, all these files getting encrypted, red flag, stop it, we saved it. Then they started doing different patterns, and it was one processor thread, and then they switched to 3, and we caught that. It's nuts, that helps. It's an arms race. How well that's working, I don't know. I don't want to find out. But usually a lot of cases with ransomware, people get in using a Trojan or what have you. And then basically, if you can block that Trojan to start with, if you can find it, that can help prevent you becoming a victim of ransomware. Ransomware for larger businesses, usually what they find out is they've broken into the system. They've been there for a certain amount of time. They figured out where the vulnerabilities are, what the important assets are. And once they figured that out, that's when they deploy the ransomware. So it's a little different. So getting back to patching or keeping things up to date, if you kept your systems up to date, you wouldn't have had to worry about WannaCry. And then trust nobody. Phishing, trust nobody. Verify. And then again, another way that people have threat actors have broken into things is through air conditioning systems. There's been a couple of retailers who had that. They got into the credit card systems. There's other things, and that's just, if it's on your network with everything else, which it probably shouldn't be, if it is, just keep it up to date. Keep the firmware in place. Let's see, I think I saw a question pop up. I'm gonna try and pop into it. Are password managers used in browser safe? Yes and no. On that one, I'll expand on that. They found issues in the past, especially with Chrome. And at some point with Firefox, they were having issues, but I've heard Firefox is better. Chrome is, it's really, it's secure, but it's not private, I guess is what the problem is. They've had a lot of plugins that the plugins in the store are actually loaded with malware. So I'm kind of an anti-Chrome person somewhat, but on the side that I really like them, I like them in Apple. Apple's keeps coming up, it's really solid security. I like it because if I'm on one computer and then another computer, I don't have to, the passwords link over the cloud. I know that they're encrypted in a manner that nobody's cracked that I know of yet. It's probably some 0-day with the NSA and they figured it out, but on the surface, the average person isn't going to get into it. I prefer using a password manager if you don't have that. They work the same way. They work in your browser. But let's take a step back and say, okay, maybe you don't really want to go through using a password manager. And I understand that it's inconvenient. It's learning something new. And right now, you wish you were on the other call right now learning about the PPP program. And you're going to have to watch that right after this instead of implementing a password manager. If you're going to use your browser and it's going to manage your passwords, that's a lot better than you using weak passwords. So my 2 cents on that is it's a lot better than what a lot of people use. A lot of people use the under the keyboard password. I don't have any there just for proof, but yes, anything's better than nothing. Let me see if I have others. No, we're good there. So I'm going to jump into sort of a summary, but so in this time, think of your questions. Anything's kind of on the table. I'll try and answer as I can. So yeah, passwords. Use a password manager. Back up your computers. Anything sensitive, critical to your personal operations, like your phone, maybe even your music and videos, if that's critical to you, to your happiness in life. Back it up. And again, we talked about backups. Keep it away from, not in the same room. Keep it disconnected too. I should have emphasized that. If you keep it connected and the ransomware from your employee gets onto your computer, anything you have permissions to, it'll go to. So if it's plugged in the USB drive, it'll start encrypting the files in your USB drive. Keep your Internet of Things up to date. Get them off the default passwords. That's just, those are published out there. If you get bored, you can go out there and Google router default passwords, and you'll see anything and everything out there. Use antivirus, even if you're on an Apple. I do. I highly recommend it. And yeah, have your stranger danger on when you turn on your computer. It was really nice and kind of a safe place maybe 20 years ago, but it's there's a lot of bored people out there and some bad ones too. And you need to be wary and cautious as you proceed and make it a good experience. Do we have further questions?
Well, it doesn't look like it, Jim, but thank you so much for joining us today. And Jim provided his contact information. And we are happy to help too with SBDC here in Iowa. We do have a dedicated cybersecurity webpage that has a lot of great resources on it as well. But thanks so much, Jim, for joining us today. And we hope all is well in Wyoming. And we look forward to hearing from you sometime again in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.